Sir, now?
Yes, sure. Start.
Yeah, over to our teammates for starting the webinar. Thank you.
Good evening, all. Let us start today's session with a silent prayer. Okay, thank you. Stephen Napo once said, technology's trusted is a good thing, but control is the better one. On that note, let us start today's session. We all are here to attend a webinar conducted by Computer Science and Engineering Department of Mar Baselius Institute of Science and Technology, Kottayam, on the topic of security in cyberspace. Our institution has conducted a number of webinars in the year 2020, in which about 9,500 people participated from more than 3,250 institutions in India and abroad. Just like all those success stories, we sincerely wish that this webinar will also prove to be an identifying one. Now, let us move on our official function. First, I would like to invite our panel lead, Dr. P. Sojan Lal, Principal, MBITS Kottayam, and the Professor in Department of CSE to welcome the gathering. He has more than 30 years of blended experience with major international petroleum companies in the Middle East and premier educational institutions in India. He has authored 6 technical books, majority in the field of computer science. All this above, he is the main pillar behind the success of our institution. He is a dedicated, passionate, and motivated, resourceful, and determined man. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Binto. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor of Mahatma Gandhi University, Professor Dr. SABU Thomas, sir, most eminent academicians, as well as having the exceptional knowledge from the industry, Dr. D.R. Vaman, sir, from United States of America, our distinguished members who came for attending today's sessions, and my colleagues, faculty members, and my dear students, a very good evening as well as good morning to all of you. Today we are very, very fortunate to have this webinar to start with now. And again, 2 major eminent personalities are over here. One is our chief guest, who is just waiting for his inaugural address. So I'm sure that I'll not take much time on today. When I was looking for his profile, I heard a lot about her, sir, but recently I just happened to look at your citations. It is really amazing, sir, having somebody having a 55,000 citations. No one will really believe. When students are finding difficulty in getting one good research papers, and again, getting one item indexed paper itself is something really, that it's really very difficult. And I can see that 790 item index publications are there. And again, when you look at the recent profile, about 50, 60, all good papers are coming out also. And again, those papers are not there in the item because gradually it will pick up and it comes. And some papers, even with the 2,000 citations, these are all really amazing, sir. Sir, pronouns to you, sir. We are really fortunate to have you over here, sir. Welcome to you, sir, for this gathering, sir. And Dr. D.R. Vaman, sir, is familiar for all the people in MBITS. And again, sir, he is having 55 international patents and an equal number of PhDs from United States of America. And again, with all my privileges and distinguished honor, sir, we are extremely fortunate to have you over here. And really, we are blessed on this day. And also, Vaman, sir, is associated with MBITS Engineering College, and he's one of the co-guide, even though he was really retired from United States. He was very concerned, and he signed an agreement with MBITS Engineering College for a continuous association and having these programs and all. Always his blessings was very much vital for us. Even in 2019, when we went for the Smart India Hackathon, sir, your exceptional guidance was made us to stand distinct among all these IITs, NITs, and we bagged the first prize in Bangalore Smart India Hackathon. Once again, on behalf of the entire audience over here, sir, hearty welcome to this program, sir. And also that on the coming days, we have engineer Jyothi Ramaswamy, head of cybersecurity from TCS Trivandrum, who is having an exceptional experience in the cyberspace. She will be speaking, as well as engineer Binto Kurien. He is also an alumnus of NIT Warangal. He is a senior IT specialist and is associated with Association of American Medical Colleges, Washington, DC. And engineer Jyothi madam will be speaking on the cybersecurity, governance, risk, and compliance. And Binto Kurien will be speaking on the blockchain, building blocks, secure by design. So we are very fortunate to have this. And every one of you know that this cybersecurity is one of the major threats in our domain, because we are all digitally connected, internet, and we have lots of systems, even telephones, iPhones, mobiles, what you name it, everything is there. And again, with the blessings of all these participants over here, and I welcome all the audience as well as the keynote speakers for the forthcoming days, engineer Jyothi Ramaswamy as well as engineer Binto Kurien. And again, all the participants over here and my dear friends, students, participants from the industry, everyone, a very warm welcome to all of you. And thank you very much for joining today. Over to Binto Thomas.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to invite Professor Dr. SABU Thomas, Vice Chancellor, Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam, to inaugurate the section. He is the Professor of Polymer Science and Engineering in School of Chemical Science and Founder Director, International and Inter-University Center for Nanoscience and Nanotechnology. We are extremely pleased to note that you have exceptional research contributions to mankind, and citation index crossed around 54,800 with I-10 index 790. He has a total of 1,101 publications and 3 granted patents, 135 books, and have supervised around 107 PhD theses. He was also the former Dean of Technology and Applied Science and Syndicate. He holds a PhD in Polymer Blend, Thermoplastic Elastomers from PVC, Polyesters, EVA blends. We are so happy to have you here, sir. So kindly, please inaugurate our session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Very, good evening to all my Indian friends, and very good morning to our US friends, particularly Professor Vaman and the principal of the college, Dr. Lal, very dynamic principal, and I'm glad that Mar Basilios Institute of Technology is one of our very active colleges under Mahatma Gandhi University, and all my colleagues who are attending, friends attending this wonderful webinar on security in cyberspace. And I'm glad that this meeting is jointly organized with Tata Consultancy Services, TCS India, and DRJ Telecom, MD United States. And I'm also glad that Professor Vaman is actually interacting with your college in a very, very deep manner. So congratulations to all the organizers. Congratulations to all the speakers. We have excellent speakers from US. Professor Vaman is giving a talk today on impact of social media on future cyber threats. And then Engineer Jyothi Ramaswamy is giving a talk on cyber security, governance, risk, and compliance. And I understand that Engineer Binto Kurien, Senior IT Specialist, is giving a talk on blockchain building blocks secure by design. So fantastic meeting. So I congratulate Professor Lal in organizing such a very beautiful meeting. You know, personally, Dr. Lal, I like conference and meetings. If you look at least 7 international meetings. 7 international meetings. Next week, I have an international meeting, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days meeting. And we have very close to 120 speakers, 60 from abroad. So from US, Professor Vaman, we have, from US, we have 20 speakers touching all the universities. We have from Europe, from Japan. What we are doing next week is we are celebrating 100 years of polymer science. Polymer science was initiated by the German Nobel laureate in 1920. So being a polymer man, I'm organizing this in the campus, 3 days international webinar. And last month, I had an international conference on composite materials. So every year, at least I have run 5 to 6 international conferences. Because it's conferences, meetings, symposia, you name any country. So Vaman, I have at least 100 good academic friends in the US. And we have several collaborative programs with the US, Indo-US program, we have Spark program, several universities, we have MOUs, and they come to my laboratory and my students go to US, Europe also, with Japan, with Israel, with China. In the 80s, I used to do all my synchrotron measurements in China, transmission electron microscopy in China. So I strongly believe that conduct of conferences, seminars, and workshops give a lot of opportunities to network, to collaborate, and to learn new things. I remember when I was a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Technology back in 84, 87 time, my boss used to send us, when I do some work during 6 months, he immediately say, Sabu, you must go for this conference, that conference, you present something, and what are the feedback, then we submit a paper. So that I continue in Mahatma Gandhi University. That could be reason why we could publish so many papers. And if you look at my publication track record, you can see most of my publications, you have authors from US, from Europe, or Japan, from Israel. So we have joint publications, and we share laboratory facilities. Some of them come to my laboratory. I send my students to other labs. So we are able to do very good work. That could be the reason why we could achieve very good citation. So I congratulate Professor Lal in organizing such meetings and symposia. And if you look at cyber security in cyberspace, not my area, but I strongly feel that individuals, governments, universities, societies, we all actually depend quite a lot on internet, quite a lot on information technology. Without that, we cannot live now. And today is my 3rd lecture I'm giving on using internet facility. So we cannot live. I remember when I teach polymer science in the 80s, I always say, without polymers, we cannot live. Because, all these materials, all these materials in day-to-day life is being made from polymers. But now I will say, without information technology, we cannot live. And country make a lot of progresses. If you look at Kerala model development, people say only 2 sectors Kerala can make progress. One is IT sector. The second is the tourism sector. We cannot have big industry in Kerala. So, but we can make very good progress in IT sector and tourism sector. Therefore, IT sector is very important. But unfortunately, this sector is often attacked by criminals, often attacked by terrorists, often attacked by hostile states. This is a very big issue. Every day, Professor Lal, Professor Vaman, I get my personal email, I get 150 emails every day. And my email has been attacked several times. My email has been attacked several times. And we conduct a lot of program at the university. Our university network is attacked several times. Sometimes we have to stop the examination. So this is a very, very serious threat. And we have to act extremely vigilant. Therefore, cybersecurity has a lot of implications. It is a practice of defending our network, our programs, our servers, our mobile systems, etc., etc. We have to really protect them. And there are a lot of issues: network security, application security, operation security. So we have to look into all these aspects. And I hope that this conference will give a lot of information. Attending a conference gives a lot of information, latest advancements. I remember I spent, immediately after my PhD, I went to Canada. I spent 2 years in Canada. with a very leading professor in macromolecular science. You know what he used to do is he goes to all the ACS meeting, and he used to tell me, if you go to an ACS meeting in the US in polymer science, he says you are updated, you know the latest advancements. Therefore, I strongly feel that conferences give us a lot of opportunity to understand the latest advancements. Therefore, I request all the participants, all the attendees to be very active, interact with the speakers. We have eminent speakers like Professor Vaman from the US and also Professor Jyothi, and lots of nice speakers. So interact with them, understand the subject. And I also request Professor Lal, after the conference, you must come out with a very good document and submit a document to Government of India and Government of Kerala. And we could be vigilant. You know, we could safeguard our, we could strengthen our security system. So I don't want to extend further. With all your permission, I declare that this international webinar on cybersecurity has been inaugurated, and I wish you all the best for the conference. And Mahatma Gandhi University will be there with Professor Lal, all programs and all your ventures, we will be there. Thank you so much. And thank you, Professor Vaman, getting up early morning and attending this conference. I remember, Professor Vaman, we had a wonderful program with the North Carolina University, a sort of a MOOC program. I remember all the US students, you know, you get up early morning, and our students, in the evening, we used to start 7 to 9, a very nice MOOC program with North Carolina University for about 6 months. So all the US students, you know, get up early, and our students stay back up to 9 o'clock. So this is something wonderful. And thanks to the network facilities, thanks to information technology. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful conference. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. It was really an exceptional day for us with your eminent presence. And also during this time, let me also inform you that we conducted a previous webinar. It was jointly with Mahatma Gandhi University School of Management and Business Studies.
Yes,
and Dr. Sajiman sir and Sulaiman sir was involved in that. And that is a webinar. We had 2,038 participants live, and that is amazing one. That is the highest number so far we had. And again, sir, as you mentioned that you will come up with that document because Dr. Vaman sir is there, and he will be able to definitely bring out something, you know, that it is just in his mind. Anything you ask him, he'll immediately write, then only he will sleep for the day even. So like that, it's there. So we'll also, sir, jointly work. And by the way, I'm also a research faculty with the School of Computer Science. So Sajiman is also one of my students. So we'll talk to you later also, sir. That is a really great opportunity for us. Thank you once again, sir, for joining us. It's really a blessed day for us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Over to Mindy, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now I invite our keynote speaker, today's keynote speaker, Professor Dr. D.R. Vaman. He is the Chief Executive Director of DRJ Telecom LLC. He has more than 50 years of research, project management, and executive management experiences in the field of telecommunications and networking. Currently, he is working on advanced, robust, reliable, and scalable wireless and mobile ad hoc network managed architecture design and algorithmic designs of communication components for high-speed data transfer. He is also advising industry and academia for high-quality research and design innovations. He has around 55 international patents and guided 52 PhD students in USA. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. So before I present my slides, I want to say something. I wanted to start saying something that Professor Binto Thomas said already. What she said is it's very good to have all the social media, but you need controls. That's the key. And that is something that doesn't exist today. And so I want to talk about that. Let me share the screen.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. So you're all able to see, right? So anyway, the most interesting thing about at least Professor Thomas, Dr. Thomas, I want to tell you that I was a professor in Texas A&M University for many years. Prior to that, I was in Stevens Institute of Technology. So I have about 35 years of experience in the university. The remainder comes from industry. So anyhow, I just wanted to start with this one. So the social media is something that has attracted me. And I do not have a Facebook account. I do not have Twitter account. And basically, I wanted to make sure that my information is always private. And that's the major problem here. And so in fact, I work with so many people in this area, but I don't want to put anything there. In fact, my children complain to me about that. Why don't you put Facebook account and I can send you this, but I don't want them to send anything. They can mail me or they can send an email like that. So even Google, which is another problem that exists right now, see the threat to nations by all these industries is that they actually are becoming more powerful than the elected officials. So if your representation is through the elected officials and these people control your day-to-day life, then there is a big problem. And that's what actually is happening today in the United States. And I'm sure it's happening everywhere else. And people can actually see your information, whether you are on Facebook, whether you're on Twitter, everywhere you can see. Google, you can see. If somebody says I have a passport protection, it's a waste of time. Password protection is not a very good way of doing things. It's just a software thing that they can break very easily. And they can influence. For example, if somebody sends an information in terms of elections or something else, the social media can actually basically suppress that, or they can change that. And nobody knows that. Other people who are watching that have no clue that it has been done. And that's the major issue. In fact, today, the presidential election, there's a lot of difficulty here because of that. Some people claim this, some people claim that, and I don't know who is right, who is wrong, but how do you solve it? Today, there are no regulations of anything. So that's essentially the reason why I wanted to talk about this. But what happened in presidential election has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, because it happened, my abstract came before the presidential election, okay? How do you change? It's not changing. Okay. So the social media evolution has come in some time actually. I would say that it's 1990s and then 2000. That's when it started doing this. Everything started coming, and if you take a look at the stock market, these are the ones that they make a lot of money. And so basically that, I just gave an example of Twitter, Facebook, and Google, but the influence is very interesting about them. See, if you actually use Google Chrome, so when you start sending the data, files, and all those things, the media can influence your information, and it can either suppress it or it can actually change it, and nobody knows that it has been done. That is the key problem actually. And the loss of privacy, once you have to accept the moment you put something on the Facebook, that means there is no privacy. And anybody can manipulate. It's not the organizations. The people who have access to this organization can manipulate. In fact, many of the democratic countries will face in the future that many other countries can influence the elections by basically going through the social media. And that's one of the interesting aspects that might come up. And today it may not be there, but I think sooner or later you'll see that. So every country wants to have a president of a country who is more influential and much more amenable to what they want to do. So that's a big issue. And today that is what is happening actually. The governments actually are getting into this media. They don't even know how to do that. So how do you solve this problem? So they ask the heads of the Twitter and Facebook, Google, don't do this. It's don't do this means what? I don't know what that is. Okay, so that's where we are right now. It's totally unregulated. In fact, internet, when it was created, I was one of the 16 engineers who designed the internet for this country in 1979. I can tell you, internet was not intended to be regulated. It was basically allowing the data exchange from one place to another place. And essentially what happened over a period of time, they actually started using video and audio. And what you see in Zoom, today everything is there. See, in fact, the reason I want to tell you this is because when I did my PhD, I created the internet voice over internet. And basically that voice over IP became such a major phenomenon throughout the world and allowed every country, every citizen to be able to talk to somebody. And that I never expected that, by the way, when I was doing my PhD. I was only trying to get my PhD, but it has happened. And the internet actually was designed for only email services, file transfer protocols, and not for voice or video. And so that essentially how it started. And now today everything is there. People want to send everything over internet. And so, but basically because it's unregulated, it doesn't have privacy, people can actually see that. Your information can be seen by everybody. And that is what, and they think that they can, by having a password protection, their information is safe. It is not. Internet, any password protection is a waste of time. Okay, so I just wanted to know that. And the unregulated growth in media power is also a problem because as they started becoming very, very large, as more people are in this media, they enter there in the search engines and other things, all of a sudden they become more powerful and they control. And they're more powerful today than any elected government in the world. You can take anything. So how do you manage that? So basically, are they responsible for individual society, or are the elected officials responsible? So that is where the issue is. And media corruption is another thing that happens. Basically, why would anybody like Facebook or Twitter want people to join them? And basically, that it has to be a self-serving need. It is not, they're not doing it for benefit of the society. That is not at all the case. Any company that is established, their main job is to make money. So self-serving need is what actually drives them. And that is the reason why when the government allowed them to grow like that, they are now thinking, what is wrong with that? And so basically you can't say that they cannot do it. They have already grown much bigger than any of the governments. Okay? Pretty soon there will be trillion-dollar markets there, and the governments are very, very small. So that is what is the major issue. So eventually what happens to that if they continue like that? There is an erosion of democracy and rule of law. They can break the rules, and that's what is happening. In fact, the first time that rule of law was broken is when they started asking Microsoft not to be too dominant. And they decided to fight it out. And they didn't mind paying money for all the governments and continue to do the same thing. So whatever the money they paid, they were able to recover very quickly, and Microsoft grew very rapidly. So in fact, the rule of law is something that people don't obey at high levels. And media, the other thing that's very interesting is all these media would like to have single government, not single party rule, not multi-party rules, because it's much easier for them to control it. So in fact, if you ask Sundar Pichai, he said that he would like to have a single party rule. And when he said that, most people didn't pay attention to it. But what he's saying is, I don't want to deal with every party for in the election in my dealings, and therefore I would like to have one particular party to be the power, and I'll control him. So that issue is there. So in fact, whatever Sundar Pichai said, it's actually a very truthful statement, even though he won't say it now. But at least when the first time he said, it was a very fascinating thing that happened. And so basically, it's over time, nobody notices if single party rule They keep on getting elected, re-elected, re-elected. Nobody notices that this is happening. So if one party rules all the way, like if take a look at California, California is one party rule. If it continues to be like that, the erosion of democracy becomes very, very high. And that's what is happening there. So the question is, would we don't mind, do we mind not having a democracy? Some countries do. In fact, Russia, China, they may not have the democracies, but they are very stable. But in US is a very, very interesting place where there's always an instability, and they keep doing things the way they want to do. So basically, what is the solution? That means, the first statement Binto Thomas said is we should have regulation, control. Whenever you say regulation, it's control. And so when you control, there are some other issues. Anyway, regulation of social media by elected government and prevention of crime. They have to develop laws that doesn't exist today. And these laws have to be adhered to by all the people, all the companies, all the society as a whole. So social media crime is preventable. Basically, remove legal. One of the reasons why the crime has become very high is they have an immunity. Whatever they do, they cannot be sued by either an individual or a government. So pretty much they're uncontrollable because of that. So you have to remove that legal immunity and allow the individuals or government, if something they do, to challenge them. And that is what is required. And then the other thing is accountability. So threat of legal and painful financial liability. But in the US practices like this, when you to bring the accountability, they make the penalty very, very high. In fact, I used to joke about this. In fact, if you want to keep democracy, you must make sure that when somebody sues you, you pay your entire assets to other side. Then you become broke. Then nobody will do it. And that is what I was saying. But basically, threat of legal and painful financial liability. When I say painful, it has to be a large sum which will impact them. And that's what they do today in US. They're all laws are like that. But in social media, that doesn't exist. And media corruption is a very interesting thing. They can suppress the information, or they can change the information and basically send false information. And this can happen because they have control of the information. And that's what happens. So basically, you have to again do the criminal liability on the governing body. So basically, you need to take the president to task, not just the company. Because when the company is taken to task, the company makes so much money, they don't mind paying. But it is the individual that should be taken to task. And that's what is missing today. So basically, the idea is to prevent the decay of democracy and bring rule of law so that social media will have responsibility and accountability. These are the two things that need to happen. So what are these cyber crimes? Abstract practices, because you don't even know that they have done something. If they change the information and send it, you have no idea that they have done that. That is a major issue, actually. So allow and prevent information exchange based on bias. They just don't want this one because that will affect them individually, and they'll change it. And compromise privacy of user data. Basically, user data is prone to be accessed, deleted, or manipulated in the engines. Basically, all this media does that. And so you have to know when they have changed it. And you keep on tracking those things, and you'll spend all your life finding out why they did, who did they do it. And that's a problem, actually. Common person doesn't even know that this happens. Information control. Unelected social media can bring down democracies. That is one of the reasons. Because they are not elected, but they have so many millions of people access this social media, they can control much more so than the elected officials. And that is what is happening today. So basically, is it good? Social media crimes can harm the nations over time. In fact, abstract social cybercrime will increase. The abstract means basically when they change something you don't even know. That is abstract. And believe that crime does not impact them. See, if they know that nothing will happen to them because they know there's immunity for them, then anything can be done. That's the problem, actually. I want to bring technology cybercrime. In fact, I want you to know for many years, we have always talked about technology crime is very, very high. Intellectual property theft is one thing. That is, second thing is spoofing the data on the network. Internet, anybody can access and take a look at the data. Even if you are encrypting the data, basically they collect it, store it, over a period of time, they decode it. And as the computers become faster and faster, the decoding becomes very easy. Once they decode, they start penetrating more information. So that is one of the ways that people steal information. And so basically that is a technology cybercrime, actually. So it can happen in the network. It can happen in the servers. So basically everywhere you do, I mean, you can't keep on encrypting, protecting all the time. Internet was not intended for that. Internet was intended to have a free flow of information, exchanged very freely, and evolve into a lot more things for good of science and technology. That is the basis of why internet was created. But when you want to start protecting everything in life, then the things will be very, very hard. Plus, any time that you encrypt, the information transfer is very slow. So whatever the speed you gain by having high-speed networks will be gone by basically encrypting the data. And so the other thing I want people don't understand is when you encrypt the data, because it is IP-based, internet protocol-based, the address has to be clear. That means who is sending to who is known to everybody, even though your data is encrypted. So I can trap that, who is sending to who, and then find out what is there little later after that. They collect the information, and then basically they divert the traffic, and they can decode that. That's one of the basic problems that exist in internet. If you encrypt the IP addresses, it doesn't help. IP has to be clear. Otherwise, internet doesn't work. That's one of the major reasons. Okay. The second thing is basically they came up with an idea of actually what is called virtual private network, where every router there is a fixed bandwidth given, and almost like a long distance telephone line. And then the IP protocol doesn't exist, but the IP packets will be piped into the virtual private network. And they thought that will actually protect it. But because it still has to go through multiple routers, the bandwidth is always given to them, but the spoofing of the bandwidth at the input port of every router, you can actually detect what it is. The biggest threat that exists is if the IP addresses that are being sent, the public IP address, that are the destination and source address, or these are concerning with very big companies or very big governments, they're important governments, then they can actually manipulate the data. That's what happens actually today. So the internet is not supposed to be used. In fact, banks don't use internet. Banks only have their own private network. They will not use internet. It has been like that for many years actually, because otherwise all our data will be manipulated. We don't have any more money left in the bank accounts. That's what actually they prevented that. But then they took a lot of hits by actually having an expensive duplications of everything. In fact, the user data network is different from the financial data of the company. They separated that completely, actually. It's basically, in essence, in a simplistic way to say, it is, for every network, there are duplications, doubles. And that's what they do. So in fact, that can solve the problem, but I want to approach somewhat differently. If you allow the intellectual property to be transported inexpensively to any country, and they can start using that, then it is much easier. I mean, it has to be done between nations, government to government, rather than industry to industry. Because if you do between industry and industry, then the industry that actually has an intellectual property doesn't want to give it to any industry that is competing with them. And therefore, it can harm other nations. So basically, you have to have a total comprehensive transfer of intellectual property at an inexpensive rate between all governments. And then the industries there in that government can do whatever they want. If they do that, then that particular problem will be okay. In fact, I think that technology crime, cyber crime will be much more diminished by doing that. And so it is much easier to deal with this. If you can separate the technology cyber crime and the social cyber crime, then this particular thing has to be done. These days, any company can make anything. Therefore, they're having the intellectual property, instead of stealing, if they actually share that at a low cost, then they actually will do better. So in fact, this is essentially what I have been proposing, that technology cybercrime should not be treated as if they want to make money. Intellectual property doesn't mean that I want to make money. It is a defensive mechanism of any product that you build to protect yourself from legal problems. But it is not an offensive problem to make money. And that if you take that concept, then the technology cybercrime will not exist. And that is what the people are not understanding right now. And sooner they will understand it. So basically, if you take a look at that, technology cybercrime requires you to prevent it. It requires easy transfer of IP between individual countries, not globally. Every country, in fact, Taiwan, for example, has total negotiations with US government on the intellectual properties. So they can do whatever they want with that. Industries there. Stricter laws on financial compensations. If something is not right, then you can always come up with stricter financial laws on financial compensation. And then you also need to make sure treat spoofing for data on network as a common crime. It is not it's not an industrial crime. It is a common crime, and basically that has some imprisonment and all those things. The laws have to be set up there. And social media cybercrime, crime is very abstract in social media. That's a major problem actually, and that needs to be thought through very well by all the researchers in the world to tackle that problem. Today, we are not tackling that. More difficult to reduce without stricter laws of society, and enforcement requires real-time monitoring and control. How do you do that? How do you control the social media, real-time control and monitoring? How do you do that? That is not known yet. And then remove legal immunity to social media. That needs to happen anyway. And then organizations will, and then a tougher financial and criminal liabilities on individuals who have executive positions in that company. But that's one aspect of that. The idea is how do you actually do the enforcement of real-time monitoring and control? That is not known to anybody. So these are three things that have to be done. So overall, what I'm saying is technology cybercrime can be solved much more easily and not social cybercrime without regulation and accountability. Peace. I hope I took enough time. Any questions?
Yeah, in between, if you want any questions, you can ask. You can also, chat box will be open so that you can also ask the questions now. Sabu sir, if you'd like to ask anything particularly to Vaman sir, you can also ask.
Sure.
Or any joint collaborations which you are thinking of with the universities or anything, that also can be. Or even later also we can discuss.
I have to say one more thing. After 50 years of experience in the United States, I decided to actually help India. That's why I do a lot of things on an easy basis. There's one more thing that I want you to know, which I must tell you about my life. It started with the Indian Space Research Organization. I was the first systems engineer in India, in Ahmedabad, which set up the village receivers and then basically educated them in family planning and then how to read, write, how to plant seeds, all these simple things we did. And that became a very, very important aspect in increasing the food production in India, which is what the first project that actually allowed it. Second thing is that because we are rebroadcasting sometimes with a little, miniature transmitters, it allowed the design of satellites indigenously in India. Today, Indian space program is excellent actually. I was one of the originals there. Sir, you have any questions? You have to unmute.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, what I found is, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, when I went to US, as I mentioned, you know, as you mentioned, I have gone to the Washington University in Capital, and we were taken to the School of Medicine. They have got a very active medicine department, and I find that all the medical students, nursing students, and doctors, they do a lot of modeling simulation, theory modeling simulation.
Right.
And I have gone to the simulation laboratory. If a nursing student, a doctor student, a medical student, before they really study about heart attack, you know, in real time, they are given complete picture of, they simulate everything. I think we have to utilize this sort of facility in India. We have to utilize theory modeling simulation in every sphere of educational network system. Every sphere we have to introduce this. And we are actually in Mahatma Gandhi University, we are going to start virtual laboratories in all sectors. So I find that US the education system, especially in engineering, in medicine, you know, they are doing in science, they are doing extremely well because they are very strong in theory modeling and simulation. And this is very interesting. Can you comment on that? Because you also
Yes.
taught in the US,
Yes.
you know, I mean, Texas. This is something very fascinating, I find. I came back to India. I had a discussion with my medical faculty here, you know, because so none of them have any facility on theory, modeling, and
Right.
simulation.
Let me comment on that. In
Yes.
fact, before that, in 1992, there was a conference in Mumbai arranged by Government of India.
Yes.
What the title of the conference is how to take the next step for India to become a world nation, with powerful nation,
Yes.
and
Yes.
basically what they should do. And I didn't know that. When I went there, I thought maybe they wanted me to show some of the products. And later on I found out I actually gave a comparison of the K1 to K12 education between Indian side and American side. Indians do have a lot more knowledge and the information, but Americans don't have that.
Yes.
However,
Yes.
you just give them a problem, even if they don't do, they create a lot of things to come up with some solutions in US, but it is not true in India. So the abstract education of creativity is embedded in the high school itself, K1 to
Yes.
K12. And
Correct.
that's one
Correct.
thing. One thing. Second thing is that in colleges, the teaching is slightly different. In India, you know, in US, we don't teach how to solve a problem. We only teach how to go about solving a problem.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
so that's one of the reasons why they have to think through. Second thing is we're more
Correct.
flexible when they do what. We don't worry about that they should do it in 2 hours. If for some reason, if they take more time, we don't care. Sometimes, you know, I have been in the universities where it's an open system where we give the questions and they can solve their exam anywhere they want. All they have to do is tell me what time they start, what time they end. And so basically the idea of copying doesn't come because of that. They'll
Yes.
do independently. And none of the questions will be there in any textbook. The questions will be very, very abstract, and they have to
Correct.
figure out how to do that. And
Right.
that's
Right.
that's the education actually. And in
Yes. Yes.
the other thing that's very interesting is the facilities that we have in the laboratories and all those things is much more up to date. They keep industry constantly updates them. They provide all the necessary equipment. So in medical schools also the same thing. For example, I did one very interesting thing in medical side. NIH gave me a slice of the heart and I rendered it and then developed a web education of the how to do the heart surgery.
Oh,
And what is very interesting about that is, you see, usually when you're learning, when the doctors are learning normally, they actually go from the center of the heart to the periphery of the heart. But in web education, it's the other way around, where they do the insert, basically where they do insertion, that's when they go from outside to inside. So
right,
first time
right.
when the medical doctor has to do heart surgery, he has only read before from inside to outside. But in website, he has read from outside to inside. That makes it easier for him to do heart surgery. These simple things the engineers and doctors have always helped in this country.
Very good. I really appreciate that. I think, Indian education should become more creative, creativity is lacking. What you said is right. I remember my good friend in University of Strasbourg, Professor Vaman, all his examinations are with text. He's able to put up such fantastic questions. I think that is very, very important. That's very interesting. Can you hear me?
Yes, I mean,
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
that
Yes,
is
sir. We can hear
something
you.
very fantastic. Um, one more question I wanted to ask you is, we had a speaker sometime back from Stanford in MGU, and Stanford has done a wonderful work. His name is Professor Didier. He gave a very good talk in the campus, and his analysis was the reading habits in university and college students. And he found that 80% of students, he made use of AI technique to do all the analysis. And he said that 80% students, in a global scale, whether it is university or colleges, they don't even read a good novel in their first year of their study. And he also found that 66.6% of students, when they get free time, they are in social media, they are in internet, they are in WhatsApp, they are in Facebook. And Professor Didier said they don't do any creative work. They simply chat. And he told me because of that, the reading habit has decreased remarkably because
right.
of these in social media. Can you comment on that?
It is very true. But in fact, the as soon as they come out of the work or classes, the first thing they do is take the computer to Starbucks and start social media. And in fact, that is a major problem. And this is here, the people in some basically established universities, they're always given something to think about. So when,
Yes,
when
yes.
I give when I give a class, and then after that, they have to know exactly what I have done. And if they don't do that and wait for the exam time, then they don't know what's happening. That's what's happening. So in fact, that very important. I wrote a paper on in IEEE potential, how to be a successful graduate student,
Right, right, right.
and this includes they build all these things but using Legos. There's a lab of Legos. And they
Right,
learn
right.
so much. For example, civil engineering students build bridges. And I have seen that actually. And so each university has their own way of starting the students into this one. And there are other aspects also. In fact, when you are an engineering institution, there's nothing else, let's say. Then if somebody has a very poor mathematical background, then they get lost. So to have a retention, we take a lot of pride in helping them. In fact,
Correct,
I
correct.
actually had a student who was struggling in second year mathematics, and I taught her first year mathematics while she is doing second year mathematics. So in fact, So you just need to do that retention aspect also.
Yes, yes. That's really right. That's really right. Like Professor Vaman, I'm also not active in Facebook or WhatsApp. I just look at my emails, mostly. I'm not at all active in any of the social media
Do
because
your
I
children
find,
do your children criticize you? My
yes, yes,
children
my
always
my
criticize me.
my son say you are not very active in Facebook, and my daughter spends a lot. She's a medical student. All the time she's internet and playing with internet. I said, this is not good. You use internet when you require. And she's always in the net. Facebook, WhatsApp. My two kids are so active in all these media.
Sir, it's a generational gap.
Yes, 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 yes. And they criticize me left and right. Oh, you don't know anything about this.
I will tell you one thing about cell phones. There are 12 people who designed the different aspects of cell phone, including me. And I will tell all 12 people don't use cell phones.
Yes, 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 yes.
So it happens.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Mahatma. Thank you. It was very
Dr.
nice to listen
Sojan
to you.
Lal, Professor Binto Thomas is very brilliant. She made that statement right up front.
Okay. And again, sir, your exceptional experience starting from that VoIP you mentioned about, I'm sure that the whole world will be once again inspired, because you had wanted to do a PhD. You did the internet protocol and those studies and all. And also, I know that that was been a debatable dissertation at that moment of time. Examiners were criticizing all those things and all.
Yeah.
Again, we
No,
are very fortunate that a person.
AT&T would not, they asked my professor not to give me PhD.
Yes.
Because they didn't want Viceroy IP.
Yeah, correct. And also you are part of this internet people, 16 people who are also put on that. So that was also another real amazing thing. And also you are a part of the people who invented these cell phones. So that's a great news for all of us, sir. And I think
I want to comment one thing since you said internet. See, one of the things that US does, which is very nice, is when we designed the internet for the United States, right? We thought through all the countries whenever they come whenever they come up with internet in other countries, how do we start? Okay, so basically we set up the servers in different places so that they can directly their network can be built and access this particular server, designated server, and they automatically be part of internet. That thought is very important. All countries have to be able to participate. Whether today US follows or not, but at least in those days we had such thinking was going on everywhere. With the amount of struggle we had to get the addresses, I used to call different places. Do you have the address of this? Do you have the address of this? And then we built all these things. Today, you don't need to do all those things. But in the beginning, it's all manual.
Yes, sir. Sir, I think it was a very nice introduction, giving all the thoughts initially very systematically you have done. And I'm sure that now the following session, the second part of this will be more lively. In addition to the Vice Chancellor, I think the participants are also having lots of questions. And over to you, Mintu, and our team for asking the general questions. So that will be more lively, I'm sure.
Yes, some questions are ready, and I am handovering this section to Miss Tina Scaria. Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Tina, please unmute.
Okay, Mintu. Can you hear it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. There are some questions. The first one is, what are the most recent advances in implementing the social media cybersecurity to assure the privacy?
Nothing. They still use the same way. And that privacy is a very big problem. They have to address this much more, without looking at anything. All of the companies and the governments need to sit down together and address that. And they're not addressing that today. It will come. Because at some point of time, everybody wakes up and then do something. See, everybody is now focused on which country is tapping us and all those things. That is not a solution. The first solution is, how do you maintain privacy? So now there is no privacy in internet. There is no privacy in servers of the social media. So how do you get that together? there's an interlink between the internet and social media. Both needs to be there. I tried to solve it a couple of years ago, but it is not easy. It is somebody has to. You have a large group of people need to come up with ideas.
Okay, sir. So there is one more question. You stated that the major corporations are aiming at a one-party nation as they are easier to handle. I believe that governments which benefit from this will be unwilling to impose regulations on social media that may be against their own self-interest. So what can we as users do to enjoy the advantages of social media yet prevent ourselves from being influenced and also to limit the amount of information monitored by these social media?
First of all, let me talk about the first one, single party. In fact, if you live in a democracy, you would never want to have a single party rule. Because if you go to China, I can tell you what happens, right? There's an example of that. Chinese are very prosperous, but they don't have any say in the government. So they have separated the population and the government. So that is not acceptable to majority of the nations. The second thing, you take an example of India. I keep telling everybody, India is a true democracy. America is not a true democracy, by the way. It's a representative democracy. And so there is a lot of difference between Indian democracy and so in fact, there is more chaos in India because it's a true democracy. So in fact, that's what is one of the aspects. The social media, the way that they grew, totally unregulated as a private company, they have never been regulated any time in their life. Suddenly, somebody wants to regulate, it's very difficult because they are much more powerful than the governments themselves. US government is much smaller than the social media people. They are much more, individually, they're much richer actually. And that's one of the major reasons why things won't happen. In fact, I was interviewed by a Chinese telecom minister many years ago. And he wanted to ask, he asked me, what shall we do? Well, we want to sell you the product. So you can do that. And one thing led to another. Finally, I said, you want to make your people rich, but why would they listen to you when they become rich? He said, we're going to put controls on them. Police will be there all the time. And I said, they will buy the police. Then what? Then what? So in fact, there's a very clever mixture of things that they do so that such a thing doesn't happen. But there is still a lot of corruption. It will be there. In Shanghai, you have multi-billionaires are there, but they won't listen to the government, right? So this is one of the things that always happened. Even in the 90s, when I went there, I was quite shocked when they didn't know how to answer that. So in fact, eventually democracy allows you to be able to participate equally, whether you are poor or rich, and it has to be done. There's a common good that needs to come, but that requires accountability. That is what is missing today. The rich people can get away with murder. Poor people will be locked up all the time, right? That should not happen. In fact, recently there was a crime bill that was passed to allow this thing, to allow the people to be released for whatever they did earlier. And that kind of thing, people need to think through, just not pass a law, but at least there has to be a national consensus on what to do.
Okay, sir. So one more question is there. People are requested to share their data to shops or market wherever they go to track virus transmissions. So does this will become a reason for data misuse?
Can you repeat that question? I didn't quite hear.
Okay. People are requested to share their data to shops and market wherever they go to track virus transmissions. So does this will become a reason for data misuse?
Yes. In fact, that's a very, very nice thing to have a data misuse. So in fact, if you have a virus and you send that, you respond to something, it keeps going everywhere. And so basically, you can corrupt individuals and big corporations like that. In fact, there are a lot of viruses that I used to deal with when I was the CEO of a company, and it was not an easy thing. In fact, you have to develop a different notion of quality of service in the network, and where the information quality includes the virus protection. See, earlier, they used to have they penetrated viruses in the attachments, file attachments. But over a period of time, they started attacking the network layer. When they attack the network layer, then all of the switches, everything will be corrupted. You can bring the entire network down. So there are some solutions people tried. In fact, I also worked on some of these things. So when I want to find out where the root of that problem came from. You remember, internet has if you know the router, everything is between router to router. If you know the source router, where it originated, then you can go and see the population there. In fact, I used to say this, when the network, when somebody sends it like this, and somewhere along the line, then it doesn't go into your server, but it is sent to some other law-abiding agencies which actually control that. In fact, I used to even more, I used to even more say it much more bluntly. When FBI sees this one, they'll send a cruise bomb and put it there in their network. That is not quite true, but in fact, I want you to know that their solutions can become very extreme. So you can't do all these things. See, you're trying to solve something which is unnecessarily done by other people. So it needs to be prevented, actually. They should not do that. How do you do that? So you have to come up with solutions that actually allow them not to do such things. We don't have a solution, but at least that is a much better way of doing things than simply having wars between countries.
Okay, sir, there's one more question there. Role of ethics play vital in social media and regulating cyber crimes. Will you accept with it? If yes, how to promote it in the country like India?
Yes, in fact, the one weakness in Indian education is there is no course on ethics. It's only in recent times I've noticed one lawyer actually in Bangalore, she teaches ethics to engineering students. So the engineers never actually learned beyond the engineering side. In this country, we have much more humanities courses for engineers. We teach them almost 8 humanities courses in the entire undergraduate program. So you need to do that. See, most of the engineers in India, they only learn engineering. Beyond that, they don't know. So if you are designing things, you have to also have some ethics. And that ethics will come from the humanities courses. Generally, population need to become, in fact, I think India has grown much better today compared to what I used to see before. But at least, you have to slowly develop that. It's not something, it's not something that comes overnight. The other thing I want you to know is I was asked to give a lecture in Mumbai at the time that they had a terrorist attack. And I was actually giving a lecture on how to rescue hostages. That was my talk, but I didn't know that is going to actually occur, terrorism. It occurred before I started giving a talk. And so basically, I actually went all the way to New Delhi to talk about these things. In fact, the military, everybody. And everybody thinks that people need to be educated. I told them it doesn't happen. Common people need to be left alone. And they're I like one thing about India, they're very unassuming people. And they'll forget 3 months later that terrorism has occurred. Not like here, there's a lot of fear in this country, but that doesn't exist in India. So they should live freely. But government should take care of that. Navy should patrol, all these things they can do, but not asking people to do something. That is not going to happen in India. I want them to live the way it is, and that I actually believe that Indian people are so nice, and that's the way it should be. So every time I come to India, I enjoy this. I mix with common people in villages, which I like actually.
Okay, sir, there is one more question from Akhil. As you mentioned earlier, that the password which we use in our social media doesn't protect our privacy. Is there any remedy to protect our privacy other than not using the social media as social media cannot ignore in this modern times?
Okay, in order to protect the privacy of the user data, you need to encrypt the user data even in the memory. So basically, right now, the user data is not protected in memory. All they have is a password protection. But if you encrypt the data in the memory and store it encrypted in the hard disk, then you can protect it. The problem is that it is very slow to retrieve. And that's the problem. So people don't, I mean, the computers cannot handle such a slow process of operations. So there has to be a solution in where the information is protected in encrypted form in this storage area. It has been tried before, but it actually slows down. And as people want more and more information faster, that becomes a problem. But there is a solution. Then everybody should slow down. So in fact, it's similar to, how do you remove the fossil fuels? You simply actually start riding your horse carts, forget cars and all those things. So there is a balance that needs to come. There was a professor in Indian Institute of Science. He said that in India, they should start having horse carts, not automobiles. And it will be very, very nice. And all the roads will be cleaner. But in fact, he was completely condemned to by a lot of people. But it's right now India is a developed country, in my opinion. It's always growing towards fossil fuels. Everybody in Bangalore has 2 or 3 cars at homes. That's what is the problem.
Okay, sir. There is one question from Manmohan. Is it true that major social media platforms are listening into users? There are some instances that they show ads based on just conversation of user. If yes, is this practice legal? Is this practice legal?
It is illegal, but there is no law. That's the problem. See, they listen. They manipulate the data. They can change. They can suppress. So basically, it's illegal, but there is no law saying you should not do. That is the problem there. So governments have to come together and develop these laws. That's why I'm saying that usually when a law is broken, the penalties should be high, and they won't do that. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Now you can continue the presentation.
We're done. Only discussions.
Okay, sir.
In fact, I have been working on the security for many, many years actually. And each time I actually once in a while I go to a National Security Agency, FBI. I actually talk to them about this. And in fact, I gave a lot of lectures in National Security Agency many times in the past. And this is an interesting problem. Security should not be looked. For example, one more thing I'll tell you, you should also think about. When you actually encrypt data, assume that you are encrypting data, and when A is sending to B, and B should be able to decrypt, but C should not see it, right? He cannot decrypt. That's the principle of that. But if you're sending encrypted data from A to B and C traps it and doesn't deliver it to B, encryption doesn't help, right? You got it, or I should repeat it? So when somebody traps it, the destination doesn't get it. The encryption does not help. That's the problem. So you have to, that is a major problem. Second portion. The first portion is okay, but it can be solved. But the second portion is very difficult. If somebody traps it, you don't even get the information. In fact, in social media, when you send something to somebody, you will see that some people don't receive it. No matter what, they say, I didn't receive it. That's one of the problems they have, actually. That somebody must be trapping that, right? But most common people don't see these things. They actually don't know that it exists. In fact, bank accounts, are trapped quite a bit. In fact, I don't use cell phones to do bank transactions. I go to the bank and transact myself manually and come back. I'll tell you one more thing. If you have an ATM card, right? And if you dip the ATM card in alcohol, you will see the PIN code on the back of that card. So anybody's card you take and dip it in alcohol, he will know PIN code. That's a major problem, right? So people can basically dip that in alcohol and read that. Okay. Four PIN code. Okay.
Thank you, sir. So one more question is that if internet is vulnerable for security risk, is it really safe to do money transaction through it?
No.
Especially?
No. In fact, banks don't use internet. The only internet that comes between you and the internet, between a customer and a bank, is the access side, where you can use Wi-Fi and go to the network. But banks themselves don't use internet.
So there, how do they connect the ATMs between, sir? What technology they are using between connecting ATMs with the banks?
They use the long distance regulated company bandwidth, fixed. They have a dedicated pipes for them.
So dedicated IP also?
Yes, the IP is no longer there. It's a dedicated pipe.
Okay.
There is no
so
protocol. There is no
end to
switching
end.
protocol. End to end.
Okay.
Banks
Yes.
are much more careful than other organizations.
Yeah, should be.
Otherwise, your money will be gone very soon.
Any other audience would like to raise the hand? If you want to ask any direct questions, you can ask.
You should.
Please raise your hands. Then we will unmute for you. Participants.
The person who
Yes.
asked the question, I don't know the answer, then I will actually give you a gift.
Am I audible?
Sharmila SP, something is asking.
Somebody's answer. Go ahead.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you state your name?
I am Dr. Rudramurthy from Siddhganga Institute of Technology.
Okay.
Actually, the social media crisis in the scenario, in Indian scenario, is very much different from the scenarios in other countries, developed countries, particularly in India. To reduce the social media cybercrime, in my opinion, because I need your suggestion, because in Western countries, in school education, in every school have a psychologist to correct the behavioral patterns of the students. But in India, Indian schools, we do not have any psychologists to correct the behavior of the children right from their school age. Actually, we have many psychologists, school psychologists, we have clinical psychologists, we have sports psychologists, we have social psychologists, we have. But with the emergence of this digital gadget usage, the children are very much attracted to this digital gadget. Therefore, they are demonstrating new types of behavior with digital gadgets. So I feel by employing a cyber psychologist to study the behavior of these students right from the school with the digital gadgets, we can correct the behavior of those students right from the school age. And when they grow adult in the society, they become very good social well-being as far as the digital gadgets is using. So thereby, I thought it is possible to reduce the social crime. So what is your opinion, sir?
So when you reduce the social crime by psychological methods, then
Yes.
you also ask citizens to reduce their privacy.
Yes.
That is the problem. In US, it doesn't work because
Sir,
that's a huge. You can't go and personal lives of human beings.
Yes, sir. I have another question, sir. Last question. That is second question. In the engineering students, some students are studying mechanical, some students are civil, but some students are different core subjects in civil engineering they are studying. But irrespective of the core engineering branch of they are studying, all are using WhatsApp, Facebook, and social media applications in today's day-to-day life. But to educate them or to reduce the social media crime by educating them, and this 4 years of engineering course, the subjects we need to allocate five subjects. So at least 6 subjects per semester. We have only 8 semesters. Out of 8 semesters, the 2 semesters are purely for technical seminars, their major project work, dissertation work, other things, the placement activities. The last 1 year will simply go. But the remaining 3 years, I mean to say the 6th semester, the faculties are very much in a stress to teach them the core subjects. But irrespective of the branches the students are studying, they need this kind of a social awareness about this social media crimes and how to get rid away from those social media, or how to use the social media very ethically. To teach these kind of a behavior, the new subjects may be required to be introduced. But there is no the time slot or credit which will permit them to study. So I think the 4 year engineering course may be required to stretch to 5 years because they have to study fundamental subjects, they have to study some modern subjects also. Then this is a problem that both the students and the teachers and the educationalists are also facing the same kind of a problem. So in this regard, I need your any good suggestion to resolve this.
But in universities in this country also, they keep arguing like this to increase the semester. But actually, that cannot be done because of so much of play that is there in the NSF and other organizations. So I would suggest a different method. You should actually have an active participation of a set of conferences where the students participate from different branches in these kinds of discussions, rather than having the course itself. They should have an ethics course. They should have an ethics course, but the rest of the discussions should take place outside the education. So basically, you need to make sure that the conferences are more rigorous.
Even I think that is what our Vice Chancellor was stressing upon, that it should come through different conferences and all. So, yeah. Okay. Any other questions, Tina? I think 1 or 2 questions, then we can wind up.
Yes, sir, there's one question. Does blockchain have a potential to be a new safer internet?
Yes. In fact, the news media can use that effectively to actually for their own needs. They don't need, see, earlier, many years ago, the reporters used to go to every country, but they don't need to. The local population can provide the information very substantially, and then it can be digested in a way that everybody understands it.
And again, on day after tomorrow, we have a particular section on blockchain. So the participants may please come on that also. That's an exclusive session.
I'll be there.
Yeah,
I have a lot of interest in that subject. I'll be there every day.
I know that you'll be there every day also. Okay, Tina, please.
I'm very happy that so many questions came. It's very, it shows a very true credibility of the university, by the way.
Yeah, and also the participants remains there. So with the
Hmm.
large numbers also, that's really interesting. So we'll take questions, Tina.
Okay, sir, next question. If I create my own VPN and use for browser, is it possible to track me and my data? If yes, how? Please explain the theory behind that.
They don't track you in the VPN. They track you at the edges of the VPN. For example, the VPN goes to a router, they can track you there. And if the VPN goes to the user side, they can track you there. But VPN itself, they will not track.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next question. Sir, can you please highlight how zero knowledge proofs can help in preserving the privacy at the time enjoying the social media, social networking?
Can you repeat that question again? The first word I missed.
Please highlight how zero knowledge proofs can help in preserving the privacy at the same time enjoying the social networking.
I'm not so sure, that.
Sir, if you want, we'll unmute the person who asked. Please unmute the person who asked so that you can ask, right?
Sharmila.
Okay.
Sharmila, please unmute. So that you can ask the live questions, get clarifications. Meanwhile, let them do that. Tina, is there any other questions? Let them unmute and come back.
Okay, sir, one more is there. Please share a light on identity and authenticity in cyber world.
Authenticity, you can always do. The thing that is missing is generally authenticity you can do by actually having a typical password like thing that you need to know who that person is, right? And that's what you can. People have designed it in security, so you also need to find out whether the person who is doing something is he or she authorized to do that. That authorization and access control both have to be there. That authenticity will come with authorization and access control. It can be done, whether it's cybersecurity or any other form of thing. In fact, if you have today a lot of the exams now online, that you need that. If you don't have authenticity of the person who is writing the exam, then you can't, you have a problem. In fact, in the future, you will see more and more universities will follow the online education. It's becoming an easier way to do. For example, if somebody wants to, if you have to travel to some other country, you might as well stay back in India and then do the same thing. So that's what is happening these days. And I think the experiment of online education will be tried many times.
Tina, just see that that previous question who was asking whether it's been unmuted.
Sharmila.
Sharmila,
madam, can you please?
Yes, sir. Hello.
okay, go ahead.
Hello. Sorry. So actually, I read an article on the zero knowledge group. By which one party can prove that another party that they know the value, without disclosing what actually it is. Okay, such a zero knowledge group can be used for preserving the privacy in the social network.
Let me answer in some other way. Okay. Suppose your server is anonymous. Basically, if your server is anonymous, then you should not assume that people have not visited that. But you may not know who visited that. So anonymity is not going to help. In fact, in a real security system, you have to tell everybody how the security system works. Then you ask them to break it. If you simply put some hiding some things, then they basically, it can be easily trapped. So you need to make sure the algorithm has to be tough. And so basically you need to know that if your algorithm is known to everybody, this is what I'm going to do. And so now tell me, can you break my system? And the answer is no, then it's secure, otherwise no. But anonymity is not a solution. Hiding servers and all those things will not work. Did I answer the question?
I think she's having some network issues. So over to Tina for one more question, please.
Sir, that's all about the question.
Yeah, I think it was really, sir, a wonderful day for all of us, and it's really an exciting day. And for many reasons, we are very fortunate to have this today's webinar, and particularly with your presence, and also our Vice Chancellor was also giving a blessings and a message. It's a great day for all of us. And thank you very much for all the participants who joined over from, and not only from Kerala, from all the states and also from abroad. So very nice. Good evening to all of you. And again, those who are joining from United States, a very warm good morning and have a nice day. Thank you all. And requesting all the participants to fill the feedback form so that you will get the certificates immediately after the 3 days webinar also. Thank you again. And let us meet on tomorrow with 2 more other exciting topics on the area. Tomorrow from the expert from the TCS, and the day after tomorrow from the blockchain from the United States of America. Thank you all and have a nice day. Grateful for you.
Tina, if you collect more questions, you can always email me.
Yeah, and again, if you have more questions, please come again. As Vaman sir said, you'll also be there with us tomorrow and after tomorrow also. And meanwhile, if you get more questions, definitely we'll answer online. And also over the email, also you can send us the questions. Thank you.
No
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vaman
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you.
Thank you for all the coordinators, Department Computer Science, TCS. Thank you very much for joining us, and DRJ Telecom, United States of America, for associating with us.
I'll see all of you tomorrow morning.
Yes, sir. Morning your time and evening our time, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.